of FBU Huddle. Last week, we had the Vice President of Football University and the National Recruiting Director for the All-American Bowl on NBC, Eric Richards. He joined us to chat about recruiting, about the Football University season, and some other things that student athletes should be working on. And this week, the guests keep just getting bigger and bigger. We are thrilled tonight to welcome Rusty Mansell from 247 Sports. Rusty, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. Glad to be here. Thank you, Matt, for having me. And good to talk some sports, man, in this crazy world we're dealing with. We're all learning, with this pandemic. It's kind of, to be honest, shocking. I listened to some of what Eric talked about, you guys talked about last week, and it's just so many questions, what's next. But I think the most important thing is safety and then being smart right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's top of mind, and then to go through what you guys went through in the Southeast with those storms last week, it just keeps piling on. But that's what this is for. Like you said, the opportunity to talk a little football and take our mind off the things that are going on around us. So, Rusty, let's talk a little bit, about your background. How'd you kind of get started in the game of football, and how did you ultimately get to 247 Sports?
That's a great question. I get a lot, but I've always loved football. I played when I was little, played all the way through high school, did not play college. I was very fortunate to be a part of a state championship team my senior year. I felt like I walked off the field as a winner, and nobody could ever take that away from me. So I was done. I was retired. Wasn't a whole lot of market back then for probably a 6'2", 200-pound tight end with probably a 5-flat 40. Wasn't a lot on the table. I mean, I had great hands. I didn't have a lot of yak, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you need that yak.
Yeah, when I caught the ball, I was pretty much there. But getting into it, recruiting is kind of always been my passion. My grandfather kind of started me, and in the late '80s, I would watch kids and follow recruiting, and it just kind of bit in my blood. I had a very good job in the corporate world for about 10 years, and could have done that the rest of my life, but had an opportunity. I ran into it was crazy. I ran into one of my old buddies that I hadn't seen in 10 or 12 years at the time, and he was working for Scout.com, and he goes, "Man, I knew you were the first person I was going to call and see if you want to do some part-time stuff." So with Scout.com, I was just filming football games. I was just going out and filming games part-time. I'll never forget. My first check was like $111. I was like, man, it's on. I mean, I'm getting paid to watch
It's on.
It's on. I'm getting paid $100 to watch football. It's on. So, you fast forward a couple years. I was working Under Armour camp, doing any type of camp I could do. I was just volunteering to do anything at the time. This was probably 07, 08. And I honestly did that for about 2 years. I had a day job. I would do some football stuff on the weekend. And when 247 started up, Shannon Terry, who started Rivals.com, sold it. He's come back in after a non-compete and started 247 Sports, called me and said, "Hey, are you interested?" And I said, "Man, tell me where to sign." And, I was one of the first persons that was in 247 in 2010. It's funny, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago in Nashville right before all this happened. The week this happened, we're sitting around the table, and I'm looking around going, man, I'm the senior person here. I don't know if that's good or bad. I've been there since the start. It's the best decision I ever made, and it's been a joy to work for 247. I've met so many people and had so many experiences, and truly love my job every day.
That's great. I mean, and that's such a unique story. I mean, I think one thing that you see with people in football is that they got started at a young age. If they make this part of their lifestyle and their career moving forward as an adult, it always starts when they're younger. I mean, even you, when you're running a 5-flat 40 with no yak, I mean, that's where it all starts. But for everybody that's kind of listening in, you talked about the journey that you took to get to 247. Tell everybody a little bit about the company. I'm sure that a lot of our viewers are very familiar with it and understand what it is, but there could be a few that don't. So maybe share a little background on the services that you guys offer and what exactly you guys do.
247 Sports is a sports media platform. It's not, we don't just rank players. We cover the teams on the local market. We have a Georgia's Bulldog site. We have a Texas A&M site. North Carolina site. We cover it down to the local market. Now, when you start covering college teams, what is the lifeblood is recruiting. So there's
Mhm.
also that brand of 24/7 to where we do player rankings, player evaluations. We also do day-to-day coverage. We have guys that cover the basketball team. We have guys that cover the football team every day. We have guys that go to all the press conferences. So, and and we were bought by CBS. So technically, we work for CBS Sports. We were bought like 2 years ago. So, but it was one of those deals. They bought us, and they were like, "You're doing such a good job. You just do what you're going to do, and you're our recruiting brand." So we are the recruiting brand for CBS Sports, and a lot of people don't realize that. But it has been a tremendous company to work for. Shannon Terry, our CEO, is just a super smart guy, very upfront. He's our CEO. I've met with him 10, 12 times, and every time he's told me something in 10 years was going to happen, it's happened. So when you have a boss like that,
Yeah.
the brand, he loves it too, man. I mean, this guy doesn't have to do this every day. This guy could cash out right now and probably never work another day the rest of his life, but he loves it. It's in his blood as well. So, 24/7 is a lot of things, but for tonight, I know it's going to be important because of the recruiting side, the recruiting process, and what we
Mhm.
do that way, the valuations, those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things that you said there are really, really interesting. One, it's true. You need a passion to be in this business. So somebody like your CEO, your boss, to have a desire to do this every day, there's got to be a burning passion, especially when you can cash out. And the opportunity that you guys provide for not just the large national scale, but there's so much passion around college sports and specifically the game of football that you've branched into those individual markets, a specific Notre Dame recruiting or Georgia or Alabama, whatever it may be. So certainly is interesting content for everybody that's viewing in, but let's get into the meat here, Rusty. Kind of what Eric said last week, addressing the elephant in the room. So we'll just kind of hit it head on. What is the impact right now that this COVID-19 is having on the recruiting cycle? Especially for some of these 2021 student athletes.
It's not good. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat
Mhm.
and come on here. It's not good because there's that small percentage of kids that has committable offers.
Mhm.
If they never take another visit, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Florida, Alabama will take them. That's a very small percentage. There's a lot of kids
Yeah.
that have maybe some smaller offers that the spring evaluation period, the camp season, those types of things would have been able to elevate those guys into that next tier of offers. And then there's the kids that have no offers that's had a great off season.
Mhm.
Maybe they got a new coach at their high school. We're working good. I'm working better. I'm be more comfortable in this offense. And nobody's going to get to see that during spring practice. Specifically here in Georgia, spring practice is massive for college coaches. The practice I go to in spring in Georgia, there's at least a college coach at every practice because there's
Mhm.
so many players here. And there's other states like that as well. But that's the biggest problem right now is eyes and boots on the ground. I know we got bigger issues, but when you specifically talk about recruiting in this 2021 class, it's these kids. Matt, you followed this a long time. When a
Mhm.
kid says it feels like home, that's
Yeah.
the word you look for. When you're
Mhm.
interviewing, if I interview somebody and say, "What do you think about Notre Dame?" Well, it felt like home. You know what? 9 times out of 10, that's where that kid ends up. But
Yeah.
they can't get to these visits. It's hard to separate these things. And how do you feel? So, for the 2021 class, man, I hope things really clear up where these kids can take their time and take these visits with their parents because this is a major, major life decision for them early on.
Yeah. I mean, and it's tough, and to have to deal with that, it's just unfortunate. It's a horrible hand to be dealt. But let's look at it this way. There are different level of student athletes. Obviously, you've got your student athletes that are ranked through your service and are going to have the opportunity to play college football. But I'm looking at maybe some of the 2021s and even some of the 2022s who, like you mentioned, they don't have an offer and maybe they're not known.
Yep.
And they were really, really banking on this off season to get out to some of these college camps or some of these combines and showcases that are run throughout the country. what would you tell them? What advice would you potentially have for them in regards to the impact that this is having, that maybe they can do something else to elevate and get in front of these coaches?
Well, social media is a very good thing in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's very
Mm-hmm.
dangerous, but social media, Twitter, here's the fine line I would think if you're watching this to really pay attention to is the not to flood timelines. I see kids some days every single day. It's the same rope drill. It's the same. I'm running bags. I'm doing dot drill.
Mm-hmm.
Is that doesn't help you. If you're a running back and you go out and you do the bag drills and you catch some balls one day and the next day you do the same thing, put those pieces together and get you about 15 or 30, about 20 seconds of those clips and put them on your Twitter and tag some coaches, whatever you want to get tagged, some other recruiting services and things like that. And that's most likely to get retweeted because
Mm-hmm.
eyes can see what, as opposed to these kids every single day that I know you're working and I understand that, but every single day I'm getting tagged by the same players. And it's just, I know what it's like to coaches. They've seen enough, they've seen you. So you don't have to overdo it. Put you some stuff on Twitter, put you some stuff on Instagram. And I certainly just be careful not to overdo it because I'm telling you right now, some coaches will mute you and they won't see it again.
Yeah, and I think that's really great advice. And for all the student athletes and the parents that are viewing in tonight, take what Rusty said there in regards to what you can be doing right now to promote yourself. Everybody is out there working hard, but you need to be creative and consistent in the manner that you do it. So I think that was really great advice to some of the people tuning in. And it's really cool right now, Rusty. I'm seeing a lot of people chiming in on our chat and wanting to know certain questions. They're excited that you're on. Got a great question, and we want this to be an interactive thing with you guys. So we're going to ask live questions. Got a great question from a gentleman named Ben King, and he asked, if football season is later in the year, do you think recruiting will be allowed to go longer or later? We were talking a little bit about that offline if football gets pushed back. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think if they make an adjustment to the kickoff schedule, they're going to have to adjust the recruiting calendar as well.
Yeah.
You can't have coaches in, say, that mid-December is that first signing day. You can't have coaches for, say, we're in week 8 and we're going to play 2 more games past New Year's before they start a playoff. You can't have coaches in the middle of the season trying to finish off recruiting classes. It's impossible. And for kids in high school, if colleges get delayed, I would be that high schools get delayed.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the trickle down effect. So when you look at those types of things, a great question, Ben King. But I do think if that happens, that they will have to push back recruit. They can keep the February date. Maybe they just do a mid-January date and come back like 3 or 4 weeks later and do a February date as well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really, really good answer, Ben. Hopefully that kind of clears things up. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, right? Things seem to change by the day, by the minute. So I think we're all kind of hoping that football season is the one thing that won't be affected. As we move forward here, I want to talk a little bit about some of the main things that get across our attention, and I'm sure get brought up to you. I think we hear it all the time, student athletes and their parents asking about, how do I get a profile with you guys?
Yeah.
What's a great way to be seen and evaluated by the guys from 247 Sports, like you, like Steve Wolfong, like an Alan True. So, what is the most common answer to how do I get a 247 Sports profile?
It's almost a combination of things. Being at the right summer camp. I went to FBU Top Gun camp up in Rock Hill, South Carolina last summer with you guys. First time I'd been to that camp. Very, very impressed. And I told Steve and Eric, I was listening, 247 never promises profile. We never promise profiles, but we promised to do our job. So when I left there up in South Carolina that day, that weekend, I know I'd made probably 40 or 50 profiles. Never forget Jaden Davis, the young quarterback out of you look at him and I'm like, that's an easy one. That kid's a no brainer. Even him having an Alabama and Georgia offer, didn't know who that was at the time. Watched him for a little bit. So it's being at the right camp, and here's the frustrating thing for parents as I deal with this, is you're a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade prospect. Maybe you're a really good eighth grade prospect, a really good eighth grade prospect at your school, but you go into that ninth grade and all of a sudden you have to reset because you're not the big dog anymore. And it's
Yep.
very tough for parents and players to think, my recruiting's about to take off. Well, all of a sudden you're not even playing on Friday nights anymore. You're not playing in the big game. You're playing freshman football. You know who else played freshman football? Justin Fields played freshman football on Thursdays. Nick Chubb played freshman football on Thursdays. All these guys went the same path. There's a path to this.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence didn't start his first 3 games. Now, even with the career he had, and there was some questions whether he was going to start. He was battling a junior, and the junior stepped aside and said, "I'll move to tight end, Miller Forstall. I'll move to tight end, and Trevor, you can play quarterback. This will be the best for the team." Had it not been for that move, I'm not sure Trevor Lawrence would have played much his freshman year. So
Wow.
you look at all these things. Miller was a quarterback with offers, a D1 offers. He winds up moving to tight end, and he signs with Alabama 2 years later. So it all worked out. But I think the biggest thing is parents want, and listen, I'm a parent, so I understand it. They want to rush, rush, rush. I got to get a profile. I got to get a profile. Be in the right camps. Make sure you're getting the coaching, getting the right, getting polished up as a player. And when you transition into high school, you go to these camps and you're going to see a million camps. And one of my biggest, what really pisses me off, to say for lack of a better word, is when I see a camp flyer and it says 247 Sports, and I know we're not going to be there.
Yeah.
And it makes all of us look bad. It makes my company. We that everybody throws it. Rivals 247 is going to be there, and we're not. If you have a question ever, if there's going to be media there, you can find one of those gentlemen on Twitter. You can find myself, Steve Wilfong, anybody at 247. Say, are you covering this event? Because if 247 is there, it's a better opportunity to showcase yourself. I go to game. You don't have to go to game. I go to games every Friday, high school football games. And not only do I look at that senior I'm trying to evaluate, I'm looking for that next young kid, next young player. Who are those 3 or 4 kids? And I always talk to the coach for the game, coach. Who are your young kids? Who's going to be your next guys? And 9 times out of 10, they give me 3 or 4 guys each school. So that's what's really great. I go to a game to see one guy, and I leave with 12 guys, and I make sure those profiles the next week.
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy to find 9 or 10 guys down in Georgia. It makes it a little bit easier. It's a hotbed of talent. But I think, Rusty, listening to your response there, I think there's some really great information that I just want to make sure that our viewers, hear it again. One, it's about being at the right camps,
Sure.
right? And attending the right events and making sure that you're doing the right things at those camps. And then within that, Rusty, I think one of the great things you said too, for all the parents and student athletes that are listening, just because a flyer or something that you see on social media says 247 or another recruiting service that they'll be in attendance, that doesn't mean that they will be.
That's right.
You need to make sure that you're doing your own background and your research to make sure that the appropriate means are taking place. So I think that's great advice, and hopefully our viewers are taking that to note. The next thing that we kind of get, asked a little bit is, how do I get ranked and how do I get stars? I know that it's similar to the profile, but it's certainly something that we hear a lot about, the stars. So tell us about what goes into not only evaluating the prospect, but then assigning them a specific star.
All right, let's just take, for example, the 2023 class, it's going to be rising sophomores.
Mm-hmm.
We have a ranking council at 247. We have 5 guys. I'm kind of our boots on the ground in the state of Georgia. So they're going to email me and say, hey, who are these first 20 guys in Georgia we need to make sure that we have evaluated for that class? I will send those my opinion. Those guys will make the final decisions, and they kind of rearrange those. And we work together, specifically in the state of Georgia, work together on how those guys are ranked. That's the first ranking. We come out with a top 100. When we, 6 months later, we'll come back, say December, say we play football, say we get the season in, God willing, in December, when we come back to the 2023 class, we will expand to the top 247. At that point, we will be nationwide. We need to know what's going on. We start assigning stars to players. Not only if you're not one of the top 247 players, say I have seen Bill Smith's son, I have seen Bill Smith play. at a high school game. I liked him. I don't think he's a 4-star yet. I send that evaluation into those guys. 9 times out of 10, they approve. We put a profile. We put a stars on there. By the time you're a sophomore, by the time you're a junior, we have 80% of those kids ranked across the country. So it's
Wow.
a process. It's a 80%
Mhm.
of that sample size in that class.
Mhm.
We start getting those guys in Georgia. I'm just going to say Georgia. Georgia is a state that's booming. It's booming in football. What I mean is booming is this booming
Mhm.
Division One signees. You look, I think 2004, Georgia had 93 Division One kids.
Wow.
Last year, it had a little bit under 300 Division One signees. So you're talking about 16 years from 93 to a little less than 300. So we those kids are ranked, and evaluated best we can, and seeing them in games and film tape and film and everything else. So it's really about the most important thing is game tape.
Yeah.
The second most important thing, and I say it's every camp, is a verified height and weight. If I talk to a college and they say, "Hey man, what's Matt Lauer? What's the scoop on him?" It's what's his height and weight. They're not going to ask me if you could throw the ball because they've seen the tape. They're not going.
6'3", 240.
Yeah, they're going to ask me if you can run you have a verified height and weight if you've seen him anywhere. So it's just so important for those types of things. So, when you get into all this, there's a lot that goes into it. There's not like, hey, we're going to rank 1,000 quarterbacks. That's not
Mhm.
those. It's how deep each class is and how much knowledge we have. How deep can we go with our knowledge on the kid, the prospects in the states?
I mean, and hopefully that clears things up for the people that are listening. I think that the three things Rusty said right there, and he kind of summarized it at the end. It's game film.
Yep.
Game film is king. It always will be. Always has been. Verified height and weight. Probably include verified times in that
Sure.
as a piece of that, and then just the overall knowledge in terms of these local guys like Rusty within their specific areas. So. There's a few different ways out there for all you student athletes that are curious about the overall evaluation and how to get stars in that process. So I want to kind of get back to our viewers a little bit with another question, and it kind of blends into the next topic I wanted to talk about events and what are some of the big events to attend and why they should attend. So let's start with a question from somebody. Isaiah Jones asked, what are good camps to go to as a sophomore that you guys attended as 247 Sports? So maybe, if you're a sophomore, if you're a rising, what would it be, a 2023 currently?
Yeah.
What camps would you, I guess, suggest for them to attend?
I'm gonna give a shameless plug because again I'm in Georgia and I co-own MVP camps with Chad Simmons of my competitor Rivals.com. So we put on a camp, 2 or 3 camps every year, just to make sure we can get those guys there. So in the state of Georgia, we have a different. And listen, it's not invite only. Now
Right.
there are camps that are invite only. You start talking about the Under Armours, you start talking about the opening, those things. Those are invite only. We cover those obviously because they bring in the quote unquote top prospects.
Mm-hmm.
There's different camps. Listen, when I went to FBU camp, I certainly was impressed with what I saw, and that's the reason I'm here tonight. I have my time's valuable. I know that FBU camp is ran well, and that's a great camp that we will cover. There's certainly can't. And here's what I find, Matt. There's so many as a parent, you get flooded every week.
Yeah.
You get
Mm-hmm.
flooded. You get flooded. I always go back to this golden rule. Find out who's going to be there because here's the question. If you pay $85 for your kid to participate, who's going to see the results?
Right.
Who's going to see those results? Is Rivals 100% going to be there? Is ESPN going to be there? Is 247 going to be there? If they're advertising it, find out who. Okay, they're going to be there. Well, tell me the name so I can ask that guy on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest problem. We cover camps all over the country, 7-on-7s everywhere. The biggest thing is, are you getting your bang for your buck? Because
Mm-hmm.
I, I feel for parents, man, because I get calls all the time. Hey, they're having a camp this weekend, such and such, and it says 247 is going to be here. And I'm like, ma'am, I'm sorry, they're not. We're not covering that camp.
Right.
And then they want to be kind of, upset with me. And ma'am, we didn't advertise that. And I'm sorry that happened. So camp advice is bang for your buck. If your kid
Mhm.
does well, who's going to see it?
Right. I mean, and I think that's key information, right?
As a
It's
as a sophomore, it's
yeah.
different when you're in middle school, I think, because you want to leave that camp a better football player.
Hmm.
Get
Hmm.
ready. You want to get ready. Sophomore time is crazy. It's a little bit crunch time. If you have a good performance, you want somebody to see it.
I mean, and I think that's a good point right there. Is the style of camp,
Sure.
based on the age that you are.
Yep.
If you are a rising sophomore, it's go time.
Yep.
But I think I really want to stress to the people that are watching that it's not. It is strictly about bang for your buck and making sure that you are doing the necessary background work on your side. Just because something's advertised, you need to make sure that you are following up. Anybody can slap a logo on a flyer and charge $50 for a camp, but that doesn't mean that 24/7 arrivals or somebody's going to be there. And just because it may be less expensive doesn't mean it's going to be a positive opportunity for your student athlete. And then the next thing you said, Rusty, that I really enjoyed was the age difference.
Sure.
I think that there do need to be different focuses between a middle schooler and a high schooler when it comes to the camps. And I know that's something that we certainly enjoy doing at FBU Top Gun at our regional camps. We just had somebody asking, Danny O'Neill just asked, will 247 Sports be at FBU Top Gun this summer? So one, I'd love if you could answer Danny's questions, and two, talk a little bit about some of the FBU events that you went to last year and what you saw and what's good for the student athletes.
I went to the FBU regional. I believe it was at Landmark Christian in Atlanta.
Yep.
Went down and saw that, and a lot of those kids got to see some kids from New York, Mississippi. I think the beautiful thing kind of about FBU is the amount of travel. There's so many kids. A lot of kids up in Atlanta I see every weekend, different camps, but see kids from Mississippi, see kids from Arkansas. There's a couple quarterbacks from New York there that weekend. So, but here's the thing I like about FBU is you're getting coached, and it's not you're getting coached specifically. I always relate it back. I watched a professional baseball player give hitting lessons one time, and I sat through 3 lessons. He told all 3 kids different things. He was specifically with those kids, not just competitive. When I was at FBU, they were coaching kids specifically. This is what I'm seeing your elbow doing. This is what's wrong with your footwork right here. And it wasn't just repetitive things. Then I got to Top Gun camp, which was awesome. I mean that I wasn't really sure what to expect when Steve, I'm not kind of the business of 3-day camps. That's a long time for me.
It's hot in South Carolina.
Say something, man. It was
That's all right. We moved it to Florida, Naples, Florida this year. Brand new, $1 million sports complex, a little bit different. They'll have some AC there.
Yeah. Well, it'll be close to the water at least.
Yeah.
But going up there, and I really wouldn't know what to expect. But when I got there and saw the whole deal, I was like, wow. I remember telling some of my 24/7 guys, I was like, I can't believe we haven't really covered this as a whole, so much already. But it was fantastic. Got to see some of the guys, Derek Brown, Trevor Lawrence, DeAndre Swift, Andrew Thomas, all those guys come back and work with the athletes. But I think the mindset, really, what I saw there, what really sold me was kids were getting coached. You're going to be a better player when you leave there. And as a parent, if I pay that type of money for that environment, I want to know, 1, my kid's going to get better. Number 2, what level is he on? Because you get to compete from kids all around the country. And number 3, it's a great experience and something that me and my family will not forget. And I really, really enjoyed it. Then I got to go to the All-American game down in Naples. So that was kind of the icing on the cake for me. And, it couldn't have happened at a better time because we had a cold snap in Georgia. And I remember leaving Atlanta to fly down to Naples. Man, I'm covered up like an Eskimo. And when Eric picks me up in like a pair of flip flops and a Panama Jack tank top, I'm like, it's Crockett and Tubbs. We're rolling in Miami. So the weather was great. The players were great. Just a fantastic event. And I think the bang for your buck with FBU is what makes it so valuable. Now you throw in this Paradise Coast, what they're doing in Naples, and you're going to have all this space. I got to even look in after I talked to Steve and Eric and found out what was going on. My mind always clicks. And I was thinking, is it easy to fly in all over the country from Naples? Start looking at, there's direct flights everywhere.
Yeah.
That type of, I said, man, there's going to be players from all over, America here again. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to that new complex and being down there this summer.
Yeah, we're excited. July 10th through 12th for Top Gun. It's going to be
my birthday on July 11th. So we got, maybe I get an extra.
Maybe I mean,
or something,
FBU Top Gun. I mean, forget it's Rusty's birthday. All right, it's a big time celebration. I love it. So within the events, Rusty, too, and I'm glad that you're able to kind of provide an overview of what the right events are to attend and why certain age groups should attend certain camps. But as an evaluator specifically, and this is for you, and you can generalize it if you want, let's pick a specific position, like quarterback, wide receiver, one of the skill positions. What are you looking for specifically as an evaluator when you're watching a kid? If you're watching game film, what are you honing in on? Is it technique? Is it strictly height and weight? Is it certain characteristics on the field? Just give our viewers and student athletes an insight of maybe some of the things that trigger your eyesight that goes, whoa, I need to take a second look at that.
You look at things like that. So that's a great question. It's a very big question, and it goes it's down to different. You get down to different ages.
Mm-hmm.
So I always said I would never write about an 8th grader. Well, 2011 or 12, I bump into a 6'1", 160-pound kid with a flat top, and he wound up being Trevor Lawrence. And
okay,
I remember as an 8th grader, he's throwing, and the juniors and senior kids behind him were oohing and ahhing. And I was like, this guy's different. Okay.
Yeah.
You can see that's a lot more hair.
There he is right there.
A lot more hair than he had when I first met him. I mean, that's almost a Bama quarterback hair right there. But
yeah, it's got that southeastern swoop.
Got it. He's got it there. You look at what I look for on film is, and listen, I can't go through 10 game films on a prospect. The first thing we do is we go to the highlights.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, college coaches, and I'm going to be brutally honest right here. You don't have to have 3 minutes of highlights. If you have 3 minutes of very good plays, that's good. You don't have to have 3 minutes of tape. You need about a minute and a half, 10, 12 plays. Make sure you are highlighted before the ball is snapped.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to watch those. And I think in my industry, the elite prospects they're easy to pick out because they dominate. You look, if I turn on the game tape, I don't want to see you just kind of blocking a guy and they get 4 yards behind you. I want to see you drive the guy off the second level. I want to see you beat a DB. I want to see that quarterback make the throw, drop it in the corner against cover 2 on the sideline against the safety and corner. Can you make those throws? Can you extend plays with your feet? All those types of things. So we're able to use a combination of all that, plus what we see is so important for me to see you in person from my eyes, to send to our ranking council, because most of those guys are just kind of spread around the country. So I think when you look at tape, I want to see you making plays, and I want to see you playing hard. Now, I've done this, and this is what I've learned to do over the years. And I did this. I'll give you a prime example. A kid named Tyree West, who's a defensive tackle out of Tift County. He's a 2022 prospect. Today alone, he picked up Texas A&M, Penn State. When I last looked, he had like 10 offers today. He's the number 1 player in the state of Georgia for 2022 on 247Sports.
Mm-hmm.
I called about 4 teams that played against them. And I said, I need you to tell me about number 95. What did you think of him? And all 4 were just blew me away what they said. So who you play matters as well. Because who watches more tape on the team you're playing? The team that's about to play you.
Yeah.
They know exactly what 95 is going to do. So I found that to be a great tool to call coaches and say, hey, what do you think about number 11 for this team? And sometimes they're like, listen, man, he had 2 unsportsmanlike conducts, his attitude. We weren't very impressed, to be honest with you. So we use different eyes as well to see things.
I got you. I mean, and that's great feedback. It's interesting because it was a broad question, right? You've got to look at every position differently, and it requires different pieces, different techniques and things you're looking for. But you said something there near the end about a little bit of the communication that you would have with some college coaches.
Sure.
The evaluations you have and your reputation and the reputation of 247 Sports is only as good as how they pan out and perform at the college level. So obviously you've got great relationships with some of those. Let's talk about that. What is your relationship with college coaches across the country? Is it mainly D1? Is it some D2, D3? Do you cross all those different classes of NCAA? And how does that relationship work when you're relaying information?
It's really it's one of those things where it's certainly all levels, Division 1, 2, and 3. That I'll a coach, get a phone call, and I'll say this: I did some work with an NFL team 2 years in a row. They hired me for consulting, and what they brought me up to do was they were asking me about draft eligible kids and their background. Was this kid a problem in high school? If I didn't know anything about him, we moved on. College coaches, when they get a hold of me, they're not asking Rusty Mansell if that kid can play. They're asking Rusty Mansell if that kid's got anything he's hiding. Is he a problem? And now it's not so much because social media is the footprint of who you are. 5 or 6 years ago, you may not have known so much about a player, and you're really digging. Now, you can go through somebody's social media, and I can go through his likes on Twitter, and I can tell you a lot about that person. It's extremely dangerous social media if you're using the wrong way. But the relationship there, from time to time, I had a Power 5 school call me 2 years ago, about 3 days from signing day. Said, "Late man, we're looking for a slot receiver bad. I said, "I got you one." I gave him the name and number. Never heard back from that college. That's okay. 3 days later, that kid signed with that college. That's the beauty of my job, is because look, I don't need a pat on the back. I don't need. You don't have to tell me anything. You were looking for something. I knew a kid, and that kid was a fit for them. And he wound up signing with them and had a great freshman year at the school he's at, which was great. So from time to time, I can help on that. But the majority of a college coach reaches out to me, they want to know what type of kid you are.
And I think that was something really good that you said too, was it's about the relationships that you have. But more importantly, we're in this to help the student athlete, right?
Yes.
And you don't need the pat on the back. We certainly at FBU, we don't need the pat on the back. We're just excited when a kid gets better or gets a collegiate offer. So it's good to know and great advice for student athletes. It's a lot about your relationships that you build throughout your life, and make sure to keep your social media clean. That's another important thing that is huge in the recruiting world. It's something that we'll cover on another episode of FBU Huddle, an entire episode dedicated to social media and your personal brand, but certainly an interesting point that Rusty brought up. So want to keep going back to these people viewing in. They got questions, Rusty. They're coming in hot and heavy. All right. A woman named Kimberly Lang from Minnesota. What do you say about a 2023 6'9" freshman varsity starter, offensive line from Minnehaha Academy? I know that's a powerhouse up there in Minnesota. What do you say to them about getting to the right camps to be seen outside the Midwest? So, we've talked about FBU Top Gun a little bit. We've talked about your camp down in Georgia. Outside of those two, is there another camp that maybe Kimberly should be taking her 6'9", 6'10" son to?
First off, Miss Kimberly, you need to make sure you're following Steve Wiltfong on Twitter, because if he doesn't know about a 6'9" freshman offensive lineman, he needs to know about him. Let me answer this question in a perfect scenario, a perfect world. There's camps. If you go to an FBU, there's going to be most likely at least Eric Richards is going to be there, who's a tremendous eye. I trust Eric. When Eric calls me up and says, "This guy's a dude," I know he's a dude. So that's all I need to ask for. So Steve as well, those guys, and you, Matt, as well. But if you can't get to an FBU camp, come down south. There's camps almost every weekend in Atlanta somewhere, and you can come down and compete. I had a kid from Colorado who was going to come down this summer. We had a camp right before we had to delay this thing. We had kids from New Jersey. We had kids from Texas. We had kids from Arkansas all coming to MVP camp in Atlanta. We get a chance to work those kids out because they don't feel like they got the exposure in the area they're in. And they want to come here and compete. So, Kimberly, I would suggest making sure that you're following Steve Wilfong, and you can back up. I'm Mansell at 247. I can relay the message on. But that young man at 6'9" of 2023, definitely let's get the world back going first, and let's get him in some camps and see what you got.
Yeah. Well, Kimberly, there it is. Follow Steve from 247, and hopefully he'll take you from there.
Yep.
Look, let's have a little fun. We've talked about a lot of different topics and shared a lot of great information, but I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here tonight, Rusty. During your time at 247, who's the best prospect that you've ever seen come through in person, live?
Well, it's an easy one for me because I'm 20 minutes from him, but I'll give you two. I mean, it's easy for me with Trevor Lawrence because I was 20 minutes from Trevor Lawrence. He will be the number 1 draft pick, or he'll be the number 2 draft pick, whichever. If Justin Fields winds up, probably one of those two. But Trevor, in my mind, was the best player, and I watched him as a freshman against Buford, a national powerhouse. He was a 14-year-old kid in the state semifinals. He lost in December of 2014. He didn't lose again until December of 2017, his senior year. So he's that type of guy. I will say this. Many people know the story about Laramie Tunsil. He was the best high school football lineman I've ever seen. I went to Jacksonville, Florida to watch him. I watched him get in a stance, and his rear end's about 6 inches off the ground at left tackle, and he looked comfortable. I said, this guy is unbelievable. And had the draft experience of that night not happened, he would have been the number 1 pick in the draft as well. But he's playing for the Texans. He just got paid. So, things worked out for him at the end. But if you're asking me, it's 2 guys. One of them most likely going to be a first-round draft number 1 pick, and the other one should have been a number 1 pick had he not made some stupid decisions in college. It came back, and it cost him tens of millions up front for that incident that took place on draft night, where some people basically blackmailed him, had some tape of him doing some bad things, and they unloaded it on the world on draft night, and it was not a good situation. But those two, along with seeing Justin Field, Alvin Kamara as a kid, I got to watch Alvin. He was a special talent. Funny thing about, not funny, but it's always interesting about Alvin Kamara. Back-to-back state champions at Norcross in 7A in Georgia. Lorenzo Carter was on that team as well. They had 63 seniors on those teams. I mean, how do you keep 63 kids around that they're not playing? The only way you can keep them around, you went 30-0. But Alvin Kamara was such a special talent, and still close with him today. He's one of those I'll never forget. I got to meet Derrick Henry in high school. I met him as a sophomore, and he walks in. Everybody kind of knew who he was. Big.
Looked like a man still as a sophomore.
He could. Oh God, yeah. He was probably, he was 220 at the time. He was a big dude, but a great young man. I'll never forget going to Yulee, Florida, to watch him work out. It was an off day. They were out of school. He pulls up in a lowered S10 truck. And I knew he was a good player because I watched him unfold and get out of that thing. And I said, this kid can be in, because he has no business being in that truck. 6'2", 220-pound guy in a truck that would look like a go-kart at that time. So I know he's got a set of wheels now that he fits in.
That's funny. Well, I mean, look, the best player that you said that you'd seen, who is, currently one of the best, probably the best college quarterback right now, Trevor Lawrence. Obviously we have extensive history with Trevor. He played in our FBU national championship tournament as a middle schooler, and then went through all the camps, with us, and ultimately played in the All-American Bowl. So very familiar with him. So not surprised to see him at the top of the list. One question I wanted to ask you about Tunsil, outside of the draft night snafu, was the first time that you saw Tunsil at a game, or was it at a camp?
At a camp. I saw him. Okay. I saw him in between his sophomore and junior year. I saw him at a camp at the University of Georgia, and they had 60 or 70 linemen there. And I watched him for a few reps, and I thought, man, that kid moves pretty good. Then I watched the who's the offensive line coach now at Tennessee, Will Friend, who was the offensive coach at Georgia at the time. I watched Will Friend, those guys pull him over to the side, and they did some drills with him, and I
Mm-hmm.
watched his feet and how light he was, the ability to mirror, to stay in front of somebody and like that. Then I go home that night and I look at his tape and see him coming off the ball in pads, and it was just one of those like, man, this dude is
No brainer.
this guy's a no brainer. But I go down and see him play in October of his senior year, and I mean, it's fun to watch somebody that big and that fluid and that athletic because it's just so rare. I tell people all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you want to get paid in the NFL, there's three positions: the guy that protects the quarterback, the guy that
Mm-hmm.
rushes the quarterback, and then the quarterback. Those are the money. You better have the quarterbacks involved at all times. It's the rush of the quarterback, protecting the quarterback, and that quarterback. That's the guys that get the big money.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, but I think that what's really interesting there is you saw him at a camp, right? You saw him at an event. You didn't see him, at a game. Now, look, we've said this before: game film is king, right? But you might not have went home and turned on the game film if you hadn't been at that camp. So it's important for you student athletes out there to be going to the right opportunities. Going to off-season camps, whether it's an FBU regional camp or FBU Top Gun down in Naples, or whether it's going to a college camp. And this is specifically for you high schoolers. At the middle school level, you need to make sure that you're going to camps that are centered around development, so that when the time comes, when you're entering high school or in high school, that you are ready to shine and perform at the highest level at some of those other marquee events. So let's get back here to one or two more consumer little viewer questions here. Meek Brown, how do recruiters feel about private school? So really, when it comes for somebody like you, Rusty, and you look at kind of a private high school, does that have any bearing in regards to your views on them?
No, because next Thursday night, about this time right here, in the top 10, Andrew Thomas, who played at a private high school in Atlanta, Pace Academy. 3 years, they were single A schools. So they were the smallest that you can get private school. Now, his senior year, they jumped up to 3A just because they needed some more competition. But Andrew Thomas is going to be a top 10 draft pick next weekend. Next Thursday, came out of Pace Academy in Atlanta. Brock Vandergriff is a young man right now that's a senior. He's going to play in the All American Bowl out in San Antonio. He is a private high school quarterback in the state of Georgia, 6'2", 205 pounds. Brock is a guy that's, private school.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the tape. He's the best athlete on the field. He can run by you. He can throw it. He's not playing multiple D1 kids every week. We have seen him in camp settings. We've watched him against other kids. I'll give you another prime example real quick. Tate Ratledge out of Rome, Georgia last year. Tate Ratledge, single A private school, Darlington. Don't play a lot of top talent. We got a chance to see him at a national camp, the opening. I got a chance to see him compete against Miles Murphy, who ended up an All-American as well, going to Clemson. I got to see a single A private kid, Tate Ratledge, versus a 7A Hillgrove defensive end, Miles Murphy, who went to Clemson. He was an All-American as well in a camp set. So really, to me, it's how you perform in those situations. I don't look at a private school and say they can't
Yep.
play, because I've been around long enough to know that those private schools can put out some prospect, and the proof's there.
I mean, and I think that just goes to show it doesn't matter where you play, right? You can either play or you can't, right? You either have the ability to soak up information and take coaching and improve, or you don't. And I think that's important because I think that's happening a lot more and more as we're seeing, student athletes transfer in high school at an aggressive level. Are you seeing that have an impact when student athletes transfer from one high school to the next? Maybe they go to 2, 3, even 4 high schools. Is that affecting their recruiting? Do college coaches look down on that at all?
It's really a touchy subject, but
yeah,
it's kind of a little warning sign that maybe they can't go through adversity. That's just being honestly.
Yeah.
If you bounce from place to place, if you bounce from job to job, eventually that root cause might wind up being you. I certainly understand that there's situations where you transfer to better yourself, better opportunity. I have no problem with that. These kids that end up at 4 schools in 4 years, I could probably pull out some pen and paper if you gave me a few minutes and I could probably get you 5 or 6 names, and those kids wind up either A, being a problem in college, or A or B, being a bust because
Yeah.
they're more worried about themselves. Now, there's certainly opportunities when you transfer schools, and I do not. That's a decision you and your family can make. But I can tell you, if you wind up at 3 or 4 schools in high school, something's not right, and they're going to dig and they're going to dig and they're going to dig. And if I don't correct myself with Eric Richards here, he's going to get on me. Larry Tunsil was a 2013 All American. So,
Well, Eric Richard wants you to tell the Todd Gurley story too.
ooh, which ones? You want to tell me well, Todd Gurley was an interesting prospect because we didn't get a chance to watch Todd. You know, Todd ran hurdles for Team USA, so Todd
Yeah.
he didn't get to go to a bunch of camps. And I kept telling people that when I saw the tape in August of his right before his senior year, he was a 3-star prospect. I've got an email. I've saved it for many years. Now Eric's probably seen it 100 times. I'll pull it out every now and then. I got an email from August the 11th of 2011, I believe, where I emailed Barton Simmons and some of our guys and said, Todd Gurley's a dude. I mean, we got him a 3-star. This guy's a baller. And I'll never forget this about Todd Gurley. I was going to see him play in the state championship game. I called his coach and said, look, coach, I'm going to buy a plane ticket to fly up there to watch him. And he said, Rusty, he's so banged up, he can barely walk. He said, we're not sure he's even going to play. I'd hate to tell his ankle was a bad deal.
Okay.
You're talking about on a Tuesday of state championship week. Check back on Thursday morning. I said, Coach, what do you think? He said, Rusty, it's 50-50. He even plays. I'm just telling you, you know. And I said, Coach, I tell you what, it's late December, so almost Christmas. I'm just going to stay home with the fam. Best of luck to you guys. And Gurley goes for like 230 and like 4 touchdowns on Saturday in the state championship game. And he was banged up. Then he goes out to the Semper Fi game and then just blows up on a bad ankle. So, you know, it was really one of those deals. I knew that guy was different, but I was lucky to say, listen, this guy's a guy. And everybody was saying Keith Marshall, who's a really good player, was like the top player in the country, top 5 player in the country. But, you know, seeing Gurley play, I saw Gurley play that fall, and I went to his school and see one game. And just when you see him walk out, it's almost like Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
When those guys walk out, you go, that guy's a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And but Gurley was special. Still is.
I think Georgia's had their fair share of special running backs over the past decade.
Yeah. And it's really been a lot of good running backs. You know, I know you're going to ask me, and I'll go ahead and tell you, you know, who was that diamond in the rough guy. And Nick Chubb was 10 minutes from me. And I didn't see Nick Chubb play as a sophomore. And I kind of run into him as a junior a little bit, heard about him. And in South Carolina offered him right before he went to a junior all-star game in Georgia. And I'll never forget, after the first day of practice, going back to the hotel, all those high school coaches had reached out to all these college coaches, and they were pulling Nick down into the lobby. I mean, it was Georgia, it was Alabama, it was Florida. Everybody was on that phone. He got like 10 offers that day after everybody. Here's a kid that played in the split veer back offense, 3-back, you know, wishbone almost.
Right.
He didn't know how to take a tall sweep, Matt. He did not know how to take a tall sweep as a junior in high school. They had to basically back his steps up in the all-star game. But, man, he put the ball in his hands. He was special, and he winds up being who he is. And like Trevor, I know Nick and spent a lot of time around Nick. I'll never forget, you know, people ask me about Nick all the time. Here's a quick story about Nick. Nick's going to fall camp his senior year at the University of Georgia. Nick doesn't owe me anything. I mean, I've wrote stories on him, wishing him the best. He lives 15 minutes from me south, and Trevor Lawrence is 20 this way. So somewhere along the line, I should have been a better athlete. The water's pretty good up here. I didn't get the same juice those kids were drinking, obviously, but you go look, and Nick called and he said, Mr. Mansell, are you at home? And I said, yeah, I'm at home. He said, I want to swing by. I said, okay. He swings by, pulls in my driveway, and Nick Chubb don't say a lot. Nick Chubb pulled in and basically said, Mr. Mansell, thank you for everything you ever did for me. Thank you for all the stories you wrote for me. Here's the kid's a senior in college. I ain't wrote a story about Nick Chubb in 4 years. And I said, Nick, you don't ever, you don't have to, but, he took some pictures with my kids and they were all fans. And that just tells you a little bit about how humble he is, what type of person he is. Because I can tell you this, I do talk to him a good bit, and Nick Chubb is still the same guy that I met when he was a 10th grader. Just got a few more commas in his salary now.
He's got a couple more comments,
Yeah.
just a few.
Yep.
I mean, and finding somebody like that, a diamond in the rough, that'll happen, and you didn't see Nick during games, right? You saw him at a random camp, and I think that's one thing for some student athletes out there that are maybe playing in a system that they're not comfortable with, or maybe doesn't, quote unquote, project to the college game. Well, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? In the sense of, as long as you're a good football player, those college coaches and these recruiters and analysts, they can see through that. So,
Sure.
My advice, and I'm sure Rusty's advice would be, is don't get bogged down with the style of system that you're playing in high school. Just focus on becoming a better player. Rusty, we're coming up on an hour, and we still got a lot of questions rolling in. So I'm going to ask one more, and then we'll let you go. This question is from Myron Williams. In your opinion, as a middle school athlete, what is more important, playing on a nationally ranked team for maximum exposure, or more training and individual development?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm going to give you a very, very, very honest and upfront answer on this. It's more important when you finish your 8th grade year that you are a really good football player, you are taught well, you have good work ethic, and you have what it takes to be able to survive a high school summer and a high school football practice. Because I'm telling you right now, there's very, very, very minimum exposure on the middle school level from a national company. There's all kind of other places that do rankings and stuff like that. Nothing against them, but for the national guys, we wait till you get in high school. You take those middle school years and like go to a camp like FBU, you're gonna be a better player when you leave there, and that's what you need to be. Each camp you go to and each setting, each season, be better and get better and learn to compete against your peers, not just the kids at your middle school. I think it's more important to be a more polished player than it is to play on whatever a high profile middle school team is. More, I think, be ready when you get into high school, because I'm telling you, it's a very sobering feeling to come into high school as a 9th grader, and next thing you know, you're in the back of the line. These seniors could care less. You're going to have to earn your way again. You were the big dog in 8th grade. Now you're going to go into 9th grade. You're talking about 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. When you're a 14-year-old young man, that's a huge difference. So you just stay buttoned up, you stay in your lane, and you don't be the guy that makes the team do all the reps again. You finish your drill and work hard. And I think once you get through your freshman year of high school, you start growing more, you get stronger, and then like, hey, I belong here. I've been through a summer, I know what to expect. And as you come into 10th grader, but a lot of kids play as freshmen, not as many. But as you transition that 10th grade year, that's a big year for high school players. And Matt, let me tell you one thing too, because I see some questions here, and I got a text message from a parent to say, "Will you please tell me what you told me before?" College camps. I get this all the time. What should we do? How many should we go to?
Charles Chapman's question.
Well, there's some parents asking this question too, and I got a text message from a parent that I spoke with. College camps, you want to look for one thing. You want to look for those one-day camps. If you're if you're a rising 9th grader, upperclassman, rising 9th grader through rising senior, you want to go online and you want to look for those one-day camps. They're 50, $60, those types of things. Go to those camps, because that is, you talking about bang for your buck. You get to work out in front of those staffs. Even if you're a freshman, the most important thing you're going to get there is height and weight, and you're going to be put in their database. And here's what I say: you can go to camps all day, every day. When in a normal world, you can go to camps all day long in these colleges. Take you 5 schools, and you pick that dream school. If your dream school is Alabama, and you go all the way down to maybe Sanford's another school, maybe Furman over in South Carolina. You get you a mix. And if you're financially able as a parent and you want to do this, you take your kid to Alabama, which are going to be 1,200 kids there. Know that up front, same way as big schools. And you go those camps. You get you a dream school and you go all the way down to the lowest, where I would be comfortable my kid going to play college football on a scholarship. and you hit all this, because I'm telling you right now, I see too many, and I'm just going to be blunt again. I see too many of the Facebook parents who take them to Alabama,
Yep.
A&M, LSU, and their pages covered up visits. And 2 years later, you're begging to sign with anybody because you didn't get that range to allow other staff to see you. So you got to get a range. You got to sit down with your young men, especially if this world changes quick as we can. And I'll say this for 2022 parents. I would do that this summer if you're able.
Yeah.
If this thing gets you 5 schools, but don't go to Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M. If you go get you a range, top to bottom, and try to hit that range where you be comfortable, and you'll get more bang for your buck and more staffs can see you.
I mean, that's a common trap, right? That a lot of student athletes and parents fall into is, we're gonna go to the top ones, right?
They love kids. I mean, I listen, I understand. I'm not, belittling you for it. I'm just telling you to better your opportunities for your prospect and your son. Get you a range, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm going to go to Kennesaw State.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous program. But somebody like, maybe my kid's going to be better than that. Find you a range and be sure you put your kid in front of staff so they'll have him in their database down the line.
I mean, I think the great thing about football is that it doesn't matter what school you're at, what jersey you're wearing, the benefits of the game, they don't know any colors. They don't know D1, D2, D3. Football is football. And you're going to learn a lot of great life lessons just by playing the game.
Yep.
I think one thing too with back to Charles' question and I believe Myron's question about the middle school aspect of it, that's the key focus, right? Right now, student athletes should be focusing in on the development. They shouldn't necessarily be worrying about anything else but themselves in terms of bettering their opportunities to get better. I think if they've got the chance to play in certain styles of tournaments, we love seeing the middle school kids playing our national championship tournament because it's an organic opportunity to be seen. I think there's a difference between, playing on a nationally traveled team, that's for this exposure that is out there versus playing in a big tournament where you're going to be seen by big people, such as 247 Sports. But Rusty, we really appreciated the time tonight. Is there any last words for some of the viewers that are tuned in?
Just not to get frustrated. Listen, I've been doing this for 11 years. I've had all the phone calls you can imagine. I think if you just never forget what I say, bang for your buck. If you're going to spend money, who's going to see my kid? Where's that information going? And where's those results going to be posted? I would always do that. And for the middle school prospects, the main goal is to be better. Is my young man getting coached? Is my kid going to be better? And listen, you're going to be better going to compete in a place like FBU because you're going to go back to your school and most likely you're going to be the big dog. You've already been in these competitions. You've been in that arena a little bit. You should be more comfortable. Yeah. Those types of things will help you as you transition to high school. And don't get worried about that freshman year in high school. There's not one thing wrong with playing on Thursdays as a freshman in high school. I could name off 50 NFL players next week that I guarantee you all started on Thursdays as a freshman. Don't worry about that. Just because you were a such and such All-American as an eighth grader.
Yeah.
There's so many in national eighth grader All-Americans. Don't worry about it. Just exit middle school as polished and ready as you go. Get through that freshman year and enjoy high school. It's a great time.
100%. Well, Rusty, I appreciate you coming on tonight. We certainly appreciate it at FBU. We love working with you and everybody at 247 Sports, and looking forward to seeing you down this July 10th and 12th in the Paradise Coast for FBU Top Gun Showcase at the brand new Paradise Coast Sports Complex. Rusty, thanks again for the time. Everybody at home, thank you very much. Until next week for episode 3 FBU Huddle. Have a great evening.